A police officer testified today against a Marion school teacher who's on trial for not reporting sexual abuse.
And this was a busy day with the proceedings, including jury selection, opening statements, and testimony from the first witness. The trial for Diane Graham is in Tama County. Prosecutors say she did not report sexual abuse in her classroom, even though by law she is a mandatory reporter. A judge convicted 16-year-old Logan McMurrin of sexually abusing 3 kindergartners in Graham's classroom at Marion Starry Elementary. This happened for months, starting in August 2016. McMurrin is now serving time at the state training school in Eldora. KCRG TV9's chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum reports on today's events in the courtroom.
The jury is made up of 6 men and 2 women, but ultimately only 6 of them will judge this case. That's because 2 of the members of the jury are alternates.
Iowa Code Section 232.75, Parent 1, accuses Diane Graham of knowingly and willfully failing to report a suspected case of child abuse.
Prosecutor Andrew Powers made his opening statement Monday afternoon.
What could these 6-year-olds do to help themselves? They went to the one person in the classroom who they knew could protect them. They went to the defendant, Diane Graham.
Graham's attorney, Mark Brown, followed and reminded jurors this case isn't about Logan McMurrin, the teen convicted of sexually abusing 3 of Graham's students, but rather his client.
The evidence will show that the defense is not going to allow this trial to turn into the Logan show.
The prosecution also called their first witness, the Marion police officer who investigated the case, Andrea Wilson.
She said she had one little girl that told her that Logan was tickling her.
Wilson testified Graham had received an email concerning abuse, but police only learned about the allegations after being contacted by the principal of Marion High School.
Diane Graham kicked that email up the food chain as you would expect. And within a day or 2, law enforcement's in the building.
If convicted, Graham faces up to a $625 fine and 30 days in jail. In the newsroom, Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV9 News.
Parents and teachers testified today at the trial of a Marion kindergarten teacher.
Diane Graham worked at Starry Elementary in Marion. Prosecutors say she did not report the sexual abuse of some of her students, even though by state law she's a mandatory reporter. The abuse happened for months, starting in August 2016, and because of publicity in Lynn County, the trial is taking place in Tama County. KCRG TV9's Josh Scheinblum joins us live tonight from Toledo. And Josh, who was testifying for the prosecution today?
Bruce, court wrapped up just about a half an hour or so ago. Another long day of testimony as prosecutors brought more witnesses forward. To start the day, there was a teacher who testified who shared a classroom with Diane Graham. Her name is Sarah Severs. Severs testified the previous school year she had the same in-classroom volunteer who has since been convicted of sex abuse. She says she had concerns and described him as immature. In her words, he was basically another student in the class. Severs says she reported her concerns to an official with Marion High School and he was subsequently removed. Severs also said she observed the convicted interact with students inappropriately. A parent of a victim also spoke and explained her child waited to speak out.
She would cry every morning about getting dressed to go to school or about what she would wear, and I would ask her what's going on, and she didn't communicate that to me.
He picked up a child and he put her on his hip as if you were picking up a child, and I saw immediately and I asked him to put her down.
That parent says her child told her about the abuse on a Friday, and after conferring with a neighbor to verify the volunteer program, she sent an email to Graham the following week. Now, 2 students in Graham's class who were victims of sex abuse also testified today, and they also had someone from the CPC, the Child Protective Center in Hiawatha, who interviewed them, speak as well. We're going to tell you what they said coming up tonight at 6 o'clock on TV9. For now, we're live in Tama County. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV9 News.
Two of the children a classroom volunteer abused had to talk about the events around that abuse during the second day of the Diane Graham trial. Graham faces a charge of failure to report sex abuse. A judge convicted the classroom volunteer, who was 15 years old at the time, of 3 counts of sex abuse. The abuse started in August of 2016. KCRG TV 9's Josh Scheinblum joins us from Tama County live, and that's where the Graham trial is taking place because of pretrial publicity. Josh?
Beth, that trial for the second day wrapped up about an hour or so ago. There were 2 victims of sex abuse in that teacher's classroom who testified. Both said that they reported the abuse to their teacher. Now, they both told similar stories and said that the abuse continued after they told Diane Graham. One child reported that after she told Graham, Graham replied something to the effect of, "He's a good boy and wouldn't do that." Both victims were interviewed by forensic investigator Rachel Haskin with the Child Protection Center. Prosecutors played her taped interviews with the children, which told a similar story. Haskin spoke about why some victims of abuse don't report their abuse immediately.
Sometimes they're afraid they will be in trouble, or that someone will be mad at them, or that they will get the offender in trouble if they tell. Sometimes children are embarrassed or feel shameful about what happened, so they don't want people to know.
The defense also talked to Haskin, raising questions over whether she should have asked more follow-up questions concerning their reporting of abuse to their parents. The defense attorney ultimately called her questions leading, to which Haskin responded that she doesn't ask leading questions. We're live in Tama County. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV 9 News.
The Marion elementary school teacher on trial for not reporting abuse took the stand today in her own trial. Diane Graham is charged with not reporting abuse, and as a teacher, she's a mandatory reporter. The abuse happened for months at Starry Elementary, starting in August of 2016. The trial is taking place in Tama County because of pretrial publicity. KCRG TV 9's Josh Scheinblum is back from Toledo in court today. So, Josh, what specifically did Graham say while she was on the stand?
Well, Beth, Diane Graham took questions from both the prosecution and defense, and while she was on the stand this morning, she insisted that she did nothing wrong, claiming she never saw or heard of any abuse herself. Now, an email from a parent one of the victims sent Graham alerting her of the allegations also came up today again. Graham told jurors while she found the claims made in that letter to be very disturbing, she did her part and sent the email to the principal of Starry Elementary. But the prosecutor argued that wasn't enough, as it's their belief Graham should have contacted DHS. He read from that parent's email in court.
She said that she was glad that Logan was almost done in the classroom because he likes to tickle her and she doesn't like it. She showed me that he tickles her between her legs. I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes.
And you did not believe that that was proof at that time that anything was going on?
No.
Prosecutors also told the court what Graham then emailed the parent back in response. In it, the question, quote, "What do I do next?" End quote. Now, coming up tonight at 6, we're going to have more on what exactly Graham testified and explain why an expert that the defense brought to take the stand as well may call into question some of the testimony that victims made yesterday. For now, we're live in the newsroom. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV 9 News.
The Marion school teacher who is on trial for not reporting sexual abuse in her classroom took the stand today.
Diane Graham is on trial for failure to report. She taught kindergarten at Starry Elementary School during the 2016-2017 school year. TV 9's chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum was in the courtroom today. And Josh, what did she say?
Beth and Bruce, the defense asked Diane Graham if she had any motive to not report sex abuse. Her response was no, and if abuse had been brought to her attention, she would have reported it. The defense also had multiple character witnesses testify, among them an adult in-classroom volunteer who described Graham as an excellent teacher. Another was a parent of a student who said Graham was responsive to her students' needs. Then Graham took the stand. Under questioning from her own attorneys, Graham did admit there was an incident where a student had reported to her that the volunteer convicted of sex abuse tickled her.
I asked her, will you show me what he's doing? And so she did. She just went like that. There was no sexual demonstration that she showed me, it was just like that.
The defense also called in an expert in memory to testify, a private practice doctor from Michigan who said she's testified in sex abuse cases across the country. Her key point: memory is malleable, and while a victim may say one thing in an interview, that may be because of outside influences. The judge dismissed jurors early this afternoon ahead of closing statements. Those are planned to begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. In studio, Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV 9 News.
A jury in Tama County has found a Marion school teacher not guilty of failing to report child abuse.
The verdict came down early this afternoon. Diane Graham is a kindergarten teacher at Starry Elementary in Marion. A student volunteer who was 15 at the time has been convicted of sexually abusing 3 of Graham's students. As a teacher, Graham is a mandatory reporter, and the state alleged she had been told of the abuse but did not act. The trial took place in Tama County because of pretrial publicity. TV9's chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum was in the courtroom when people heard that decision today.
Josh, what was the mood in the room?
Beth and Bruce, the mood was really one of sadness. Many people were upset. There were many who were also crying. Now, the jury's decision was a sealed verdict. That's something that's allowed in misdemeanor cases. What happens in those cases is the jury makes their decision in writing, they give it to the judge, and the judge in turn tells both the prosecution and defense in private what that verdict was. And it doesn't require that either of the parties be present in the courtroom when they find out. And that is why many of the families did stick around to find out what was happening. Graham and her attorneys did not stay. But overall, the feeling in the room was one of emotion. And this was also the day that both the defense and prosecution made their closing statements. The prosecution reminded jurors of victims' testimony where they told Graham about their abuse. But the defense didn't see it that way and told jurors when Graham had reason to believe abuse may have happened, she alerted the principal.
Did the state bring in anybody from the old Marion Independent School District and say, Diane Graham, by golly, you're wrong on your email and reporting procedures? Where are they?
The defendant didn't do her job. And we heard that straight from Mrs. Graham's mouth yesterday. She never contacted DHS in regards to Logan McMurrin. She never contacted law enforcement in regards to Logan.
The prosecutor declined comment on the verdict. I reached out to Graham's attorney, but we haven't yet heard back. Now, I also got in touch today with the superintendent for the Marion Independent School District, Chris Dyer. Dyer says that a safe learning environment has always been important to the district. And I also asked him about the employment status of Diane Graham. She has been on paid administrative leave throughout this process. I'll tell you what he told me coming up tonight at 6. For now, we're live in the newsroom. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV 9 News.
A jury has cleared the woman accused of not reporting sexual abuse in her classroom. The jury found Diane Graham not guilty of failure to report. She was a kindergarten teacher at Starry Elementary School. That makes her a mandatory reporter. A teenage classroom volunteer was convicted of sexually abusing 3 of Graham's students during the 2016-2017 school year. Our chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum has been in the courtroom all week with this case, and he's been in touch with the superintendent of the Marion School District since the jury reached its decision. Josh, what is he saying?
Beth, I asked Superintendent Chris Dyer if Diane Graham has been placed off leave now that she has been found not guilty by a jury of her peers. He told me at this time she is continuing her status as a teacher right now, and quote, the district is in the process of reviewing Ms. Graham's status with her, end quote. Now, Graham and her attorneys were not required to be in court today when the verdict was read. However, families of victims were emotional when hearing the not guilty verdict. Graham's attorneys had argued she followed district protocol in handling complaints about the volunteer. That included notifying her principal. But prosecutors argued she was required to contact DHS. In a statement to TV9, Chris Dyer said the district respected the legal process, adding the district's goal of providing a safe learning environment for students is and always has been of key importance. He also highlighted the district implemented policy changes related to the internal review process after learning of the abuse. Now, the prosecution declined to comment on today's verdict. They also reached out to Diane Graham's attorney, Mark Brown, but we are still waiting to hear back at this time. For now, we're live in the newsroom. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG TV 9 News.